Welcome to the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to go from a good to a great cyclist. And we have, honestly, one of the more broadly experienced athletes currently racing right now at the front of certainly the off-road scene, but just in cycling in general, Alexey Vermeulen. Alexey from the Cool Down podcast, rides for Envy, Chamois Butter, The Feed. Also, you may know him because of Willie, the sweet dog that he has that rides his bike with him. Alexey, what's up, man?
That was a spectacular intro. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. For those that don't know, when I mentioned the Cool Down podcast, he does a podcast directly after not just the Lifetime Grand Prix events, but like the larger gravel events that he and Keegan are doing. He and Keegan sit down afterward, and they have basically just like a full unraveling and uncovering of what happened in the race from their perspectives. It's always very different than what we see. We miss the nuance. You guys uncover it. It's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. I think it's just raw, and I think sometimes people don't think we're all friends out there, and we really are. It's just a blast, when you finish the race, and it's a fun way to decompress. I feel like we always did this afterwards, just not publicly. So
Yeah, it's. I think that's why it works. It feels very natural. It's very cool.
It is very raw. The camera cuts out. We just start over again.
That's it. And we'd be remiss not to mention Avery, who also is a big part of not only all the content you create, but also has been on the Cool Down show, Avery Sum. If you are ever looking for a very, very talented creative in this space and you're a brand in cycling, reach out to Avery. He's incredible. His plate might be full, though. He's got a lot going on. Okay, Alexey, I bet that most people know you, but we're going to run through some ridiculous rapid fire questions so then people can get to know you really quick. Then we're going to get into the listener questions that people have submitted. I've earmarked some of these. One of these is over a year old, by the way. They asked if we ever had you on the podcast, and so I just had it earmarked and I've brought it back up. I should have had you on.
Good filing system. I'm impressed. I'm good at organization. That's impressive.
Organized chaos, I think. And when I say organized, it's probably disorganized to everybody else. So, okay. Most important questions. Let's go through them. Socks over or socks under those leg warmers?
Under.
Ooh, okay.
Ease of access. I can
maybe.
take it off.
It's true. That's true. I got flamed at Leadville. Some guy was like, "Ooh, Jonathan, you don't look very pro having arm warmers over your jersey sleeve." And I was like, well, that's fine. I'm okay with this. I'm going to be getting rid of those things and, don't want to have to deal with moving sleeves around. So a pragmatist. Okay. Traditional VO2 max, like those 3 to 5 minute jobbers or 30-30s?
VO2 max.
Ooh, the traditional.
30-30s, 40-20s, whatever variation you want. I'm not a fan.
Really?
And I have them on my schedule this week, and
we
could just keep this podcast going. It'd be great for me.
Yeah. Okay. Breakaway or sprint finish?
Breakaway.
Yeah.
It's a spectacular feeling you get in that one moment, even if you know you're going to win. The minute you turn on and see the finish line, it's special.
Oh, yeah. Feels good, huh?
Yeah.
Highest FTP of your career or highest that you've heard of for another rider, if you don't want to share.
No, for me, I was like 63 kilo, and I'm trying to remember. I know what the 20-minute was. The 20-minute was 4:10. I think it was like 3. What would that be?
That would be around 390. And then 390, 63 kilos, 6.2. Dear me.
So not to make this long, but we had a repeatability in the World Tour is all that really matters, in my opinion. That's where like 4 times 20 minutes is your workout all the time. And there's a time where I was like, I did this best ever, and I was impressed with myself, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to go. Went into San Sebastian, which is a one-day race right after the tour finishes, and everyone's really fit. Yeah. They suffer. I hadn't done the tour, but I went there, and we did 3 laps of Jezebel, which is about 20 minutes exactly when you go hard. First lap, 5.8 watts per kilo, 120 guys there. Second lap, 6 watts per kilo, 80 guys there. And last lap was on my limit. I was like the last rider over the climb. There's still maybe just less than 40. And that was the moment I realized I was like, repeatability is the game here. It is. It's not just what you can go whack out by yourself.
Wow. That is crazy. 6.2 watts per kilo. That's just nuts. Okay. Best and worst course of the Lifetime Grand Prix, in your opinion?
Oof. I'm gonna continue to be a Midwest boy and say Schwalmengen's my favorite course, best course, just because it's the way it races. It's that no one
Dark
would say
horse.
that. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the way it races. You can't race it easily, slowly. So there's no negativity
Yeah.
to it. Um,
Mm.
Worst course, current Grand Prix? That's tough. Unbound.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't blame you for that.
No.
It's never once sounded appealing to me.
Yeah. I will never be excited for that race until I'm 150 miles in and somehow near the front.
Yeah. There we go. Over unders or hard starts?
Hard starts.
Nice. Most transformational bike tech during your career? You've kind of covered a lot because for those that don't know, you rode for BMC in the World Tour. And then you obviously you didn't just like pop into that, but you were racing before then, of course. And then all the way to modern day. Now we see you on crazy Franken gravel bikes and everything else.
I have to say disc brakes. You can't, the rim to disc brake change was big.
Yeah. Thank goodness. Now we're not worried about our tires blowing up when we hit our brakes.
There's so many factors that I don't think anyone realized you were dealing with. Like, that was a technology. That was a bonus. That was an advancement we took.
For sure. Ramp test or 20-minute test?
20-minute test.
Same. Hoods rotated inward or vertical?
Vertical, straight. Oh, you weirdos! That's why you crash.
Looks like they already crashed. They're pre-crashed, right? Yeah. Mid-ride gas station stop. What are you grabbing?
I'm probably gonna grab a Gatorade, some kind of cherry soda. Big fan of cherry, and then depending on how I'm feeling, it's either like Pringles or something like sweet, like Haribo gummy bears.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like nowadays, like I used to always be a candy guy, but now almost all of our food is pretty much candy. So I feel like sometimes you get to the gas station, you're like, you fill up, and I'd rather anything else.
Yeah, for sure. I think we already know the answer to this one. It was Leadville or Unbound, but I think you'd pick Leadville. Yeah. What day was the hardest race day of your career?
Leadville last year.
Why is that?
I went to Paris to support my girlfriend at the Olympics.
Oh, that's
and
right.
I
remember
remember
this.
training camp. I was really fit. Like I did some of my best 20-minute numbers ever. Just not at altitude, not at 10,000 feet. I got back to Colorado the Thursday night, went up to Leadville Friday, and raced with everything I had. Made it down power line, which in itself was probably impressive. And I cannot explain to you how hard the wheels came off. I mean, everything hurt. Like never in my life have I suffered that much. My neck hurt. I hit everything. I was seeing things. Like I was hallucinating. My body was,
That's like 25 miles in is when the wheels came off?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had people coming up to me. Women passed me on the way back, and I had Sophia stopped her race for a second. It was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Not really, but I'll get there." I mean, I didn't look good, right? And I tell people honestly, I don't know that was the right choice. And we'll get into it, I think, but without from the ground up, I never would have finished. There's zero chance ever for any reason I would have finished that race.
Ooh, we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Who has had the most impact on you throughout your career? Could be a rider or staff member or whatever.
I saw that question. I'd be remiss if I didn't say my family, but probably my coach. I worked with the same coach since I was 14 years old. My parents brought him in to help, hey, just can you help our son decide when to do hockey and when to ride his bike and when to run? And we've worked together. We still work together since, through the world tour, through everything. So it's pretty special.
That's amazing. That's cool. You mentioned From the Ground Up project. Can you, for those that don't know about it, it'd be great to explain it. And then I kind of have a couple questions around it too.
Yeah. From the Ground Up started out of COVID. Somewhat selfishly, I think I was learning as an athlete that all of a sudden events didn't exist and how do you provide value to a sponsor. And so it was like, hey, we're going to do this thing that is capturing all these people who are coming into the sport right now, who aren't in it because of Lance or Lamond or anybody else other than they needed mental sanity or their gym closed. And so how do you kind of reach those people? And so that was the pitch. The first year was kind of morphed with my race schedule. It was myself and a co-founder, and we built this thing out with all the same sponsors, and it very quickly became, from the ground up, is probably bigger than all of us. We had 1,200 applications in 2 weeks, and the whole goal was amateurs teaching amateurs is better than pros teaching amateurs. And so how do we do that? We're going to take people and give them everything they need to take on effectively one of the hardest races in the country, Leadville 100, and they're going to have less than 6 months to do it. The goal is not finishing. It's the transformation throughout the way. It's setting goals. It's realizing that, there's a point in our life where we probably stop dreaming and stop being scared. And this project encompasses all of that. And so we just finished our 5th season, which is kind of crazy to say. And I would say the biggest thing I've realized is that it is a chance to find community that most of us give up by the time, we turn 25, 26. We are very focused on our routine and our job. And that's not a negative thing all the time, but sometimes it's great to create space for yourself.
That's cool. Yeah, and for those that don't know, you can watch episodes of the From the Ground Up project. Alexey, where's the best place to watch them these days for this 5th season?
On YouTube, From the Ground Up. Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. How do you justify doing it amongst everything else that you have going on? There's a myth out there that pro cyclists simply pedal their bike and then sit up with their legs up, and their hardest thing to do thereafter is to decide which Netflix show to binge. It's not realistic. You have a lot on your plate. How do you manage it all?
Yeah, I would be lying if I didn't say there's always some point in like May, June, July where I'm like, why do I do this? This is so, I'm so overwhelmed. But there's a feeling when I finish, when I start Leadville, and when I see them out on course, that just drives me. I think a lot of us are very good at talking or saying what we want to do. And that's part of it. That's the first step in setting a goal or doing anything else. But very few of us follow through. A lot of the times because just the world or the timing or something didn't work. From the ground up did. And I don't know why. And it's really hard to ever give up, even if it is effectively making me a worse athlete at certain times. I think it makes me a better person, and I've learned so much from it. And the selfish side of it is the context I learn from what everyday people go through getting into cycling is something that I'm able to utilize in what I do. My job at the end of the day is selling bikes. I race. I enjoy that. My passion inside is I love riding bikes. But I truly think there's something that is missed with a lot of people is that they think their only job is during the race, that when the gun goes off to when you cross the finish line, and that is wholeheartedly untrue. And From the Ground Up gives me so much understanding of what I'm missing. And allows me to truly understand what I care about and why.
Gives you that perspective.
Yeah.
This next question actually, it came from an athlete, and it probably goes right along these lines. Kyle asked how you balance content production and then your life as a professional cyclist. I assume that there are certain ones that fill your cup, like From the Ground Up, but then there are others that absolutely drain the cup on the content production side. Like, this is the modern athlete's dilemma.
Yeah.
How do you manage that, or what makes you decide? Do you have principles you go by?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think so. I'll answer firstly by I got lucky in finding a friend in Avery. Avery reached out to me before I was ever doing anything in gravel in 2018, and he was kind of coming into the sport on the content side, and we're just great friends who create content. And so it's hard for that to ever be something that is annoying. But then when you set goals together, there's times where you're hitting your head against the wall wondering, why did we say we'd get this video out after Leadville when he's also shooting From the Ground Up and shooting me and trying to edit. You just set yourself up for failure, even though that in a different viewpoint could also be seen as hustle, And so that's kind of the main thing. I think for me, what I love is as gravel's grown, I got into it really early. And so this is just an amplification of who I am. And Avery does a great job doing that. The creativity that is involved. I hope when I leave the sport, there's more people involved and excited about cycling. There's this weird conundrum that kind of ties you From the Ground Up and kind of ties to content that I can't figure out is almost all of us get on bikes at 12 years old. And then we get off and we get a car because that's a new sense of freedom. But as an adult, you realize that car is not actually freedom. You have to go to the places you're going. You're not choosing usually. You're not going around for an easy drive with the top off. and you're stuck inside. You can't hear, you can't see, you can't feel and smell these things. Those of us who get back on a bike very rarely ever get off it until we die. And there's something special about that. And I don't know where it is, but that's kind of what I see with the sport right now. Is I want people to realize that you don't have to race. You can have a great time enjoying bettering yourself and finding a place to enjoy just getting outside. That can be fun and isn't just based on guys in spandex. And I think that's what content is for me, is trying to build that up a little bit. So
I think
it's a hard balance.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a hard balance, but to me, it's really important. I think one of the things people realize, and a lot of my peers will say, and I'll call them out, whether it's Keegan or Russell or Matt, everyone asks me why I do too much. I can't stop trying to figure out what's exciting me. I love racing, but that's not just the end all be all for me. The cool down probably was just the cherry on top of the plate that's about to fall over for me this year. But it's been really, really, really fun with Keegan. And it's brought together a relationship that I've had for years that is even more exciting for me. And you have an idea and these things just blossom, right? And sometimes you just don't plan for it and you got to hang on for dear life. And I'm about to hang on right now.
Nice. Yeah, we'll keep hanging on. It's working. Let's get into some questions all about bikes, getting faster, specifically how to become, and I think that by the end of this, we'll have an idea of going from being just an average cyclist to being an exceptional cyclist. That's the whole goal. Mm-hmm. I've asked this question on 2 different podcasts recently. It was submitted originally by an anonymous question asker. They're getting way more mileage out of this one than they probably ever thought they were going to get. We asked it to Tobin Ortenblad and then Pete Morris. And then I also saw that Jasper Okolon, I hope that's how you say your name, I saw that you sent in a message that you want to answer this too, so I want to have you on at some point. I need to send a response to you there. Alexey, I'm just going to read the question. If you've already heard this before from other people about how to combat negative racing, you can just skip ahead really quick. Tap the 15 seconds ahead thing on Spotify and you'll be right there, or use the timestamps on YouTube. It says, what do I do to combat negative racing? My background's in running, and over the past 3 years, I've improved from a total beginner to being one of the best riders in my area. I got a few wins in my first season, and looking back, what I thought was the result of good tactical decision-making was really just a fitness advantage. In my second season, and this year, in my second season, I started riding for a team and learned all about tactics. And toward the end of the season, I was winning almost every race. The team folded, and this year I have been racing on my own, but no matter what I do, I can't seem to win this year because I'm so incessantly marked. It seems like almost the entire field is just fully convinced that I'm the only one that can win. So if I go, I have an entire field chasing me. This usually opens the door so that 1 or 2 savvy riders can get away. I'll tell everybody else they need to chase them down or the break will win, but they just don't listen. Since nobody does anything, I usually let my frustration get the best of me and I'll attack and catch the break, but once I catch them, everybody just sits up and keeps marking me. For the last 3 weeks, I've decided to not chase down anybody that went up the road, and wouldn't you know it, they still don't do anything and they just wait behind me and sprint at the end. This has let the same guy win 3 times now. Yet they don't think twice about chasing him when he goes. Racing has completely lost its fun factor for me, and I'm thinking of quitting. Watching the tour this week, it seems like Quinn Simmons is experiencing frustration like this too. What can I do to flip the script on its head, stop the field from marking me, and how can I win if they are marking me? This is super relevant to you, Alexey, because what I've seen from the Lifetime Grand Prix over the last 12 months is that there's been an evolution in, quote, strategy, and I've used that term loosely. And this is my call out to all the Lifetime Grand Prix riders. You need to be more strategic, but their change has been, well, before it was just Keegan is the only one that will win. So if I just mark Keegan, then that increases my chances at getting a top 5 result or something. And that's all they did. And then it evolved to this Matt guy too, this Matt Beers guy, he might go.
It's kind of big.
And if Matt goes, we might want to chase that. That's like a dirt bike. And then this year, what I saw, at Sea Otter, was that Alexey guy's really good too. He won Big Sugar last year. He's actually pretty good. And there's just 3 guys, and the whole field just kind of sits on you guys. And I've seen you be the marked guy. And you be where people just sit on your wheel and they just don't do anything unless you're doing something. At the same time, at Big Sugar last year, you made that move And I would say that, people probably, maybe they just couldn't match it, but you've been on both sides of this fence.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts for this athlete?
I would say joke's on them because Keegan and I rode him right off the back at Unbound. So that was, don't sit on our wheels anymore. No, it's a great question. I think, trying to think of how to formulate. My biggest advice is that if you're losing fun in racing, it's probably because you're not doing it right. And that's a thing of whether you're marked or not. If you have the energy to be racing, then it's exciting. And so I look at something, there's a local race I used to do every time growing up. And every time I went back, whether it's a BMC kit or a Jumbo kit, everyone's going to look at you. That's the point. That's what you're wearing. There's a value and excitement in that. What I think is it gets an opportunity to create better tactics. When Keegan first came into the sport, I would argue he didn't have very good road tactics. He's had to learn based on brute force. And now he was one of the best tacticians out there. He sees the wind, he knows what he's doing. And that's what I tell you to do is if you have the legs to bridge up to a breakaway, start thinking about how to do that by yourself, not dragging the field up. Become part of that breakaway, whether that's changing training, whether that's learning how the course plays out to you. So looking for wind, looking for corners, utilizing the things around you that aren't just your fitness and then using your fitness on top of that makes the racing more fun. Because even if you get caught, then you just drift to the back of the field, you plan for it again, and you do it again. And this time less guys can chase. If you go to the front and ride as hard as you can, they're always going to see you as the strongest guy. Sometimes you got to act like you're not even when you are. And I think people so often underestimate how strong someone else is based on what they look at. You might not be the strongest guy on course, and people will judge it based on you riding the front, even if it's not that difficult. And I think sometimes it just takes a little bit of actually sitting in and then making an attack as opposed to trying to be vigilant on the front the whole time.
Yeah. This is, you have to be willing to lose, I think 100%. is probably a key thing for this athlete to consider, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think reminding yourself that telling people to work, they all know that. They're probably just tired. Like, that's the crazy thing is I've heard Keegan tell people to work too. And I'm all like, yeah, man, you can do that. We all been riding 400 watts. They're not going to work. So it's like, it's finding that line of like what actually works for you. Pointing to something you brought up as a past athlete, Quinn wasn't always the smartest in the breakaways. And that wasn't negative. He so wholeheartedly wanted to win, but that also is what holds you back. You watch someone like Wellens get away on that stage that I think Quinn could have won. Quinn was marked, but he was marked after people had already watched the race go away. No one wanted to lose the podium after the race had gone. And that's hard because you spend so much energy getting into the breakaway, but once you're there, the whole race starts over again. You just have a smaller field.
Yeah. There's so much patience that I see in smart tactical racers, and that does mean that sometimes you miss out on the move. Yep. Like, let's not fool ourselves. There's very rare situations where you have a Tade, a Wout, a Van der Poel, these like three exceptional athletes that they beat the odds in World Tour racing, which is it's the most tactically complex fabric that you can race in, right? And they beat the odds because they are truly, truly like generational. They are more marked than you are at your local race, chances are. But they still find a way to beat the odds. And I think the big part of it, though, is that we usually focus on how many races they win, and then we also don't realize how many races they don't win and the moves that they miss. And there's periods like what Wout had gone through for the last year where he was on the other side of the coin.
Yep.
And he was missing, in many cases, he actually had the fitness to probably make a winning move, but he missed the right move. He missed the chance. The timing was wrong. Something else happened. And that's racing. Like, being able to check that box every time is tough. And I wonder if this athlete, I've helped answer this question 3 times now, but this is standing out as like a new thing to me. You may have expectations poorly set because of the fact that you were so dominant so early on. When you race bikes, particularly as you get into higher category or like more competitive category racing, it gets a lot tougher to have the outcome you want come true every time. It's just that's the nature of it. There's more talent and strategic thinking in place, and it gets really tough. And I think there's a trap that a lot of us fall into, to thinking that we're superior than the people that we race with and it's their fault.
Yep.
When in reality, like, that doesn't do anybody any good. You have to take ownership over it for yourself. And you shouldn't come in with an expectation that you should win all the time. And instead, you should look at every race as an opportunity to test and learn. And when you can test and learn, then that gives you something that is gained that you didn't have before, that then can help, increase the odds next time. But never go in with an expectation that it's just all going to work out.
And do your pre-race homework, right? A lot of this, I think people get into the race and they just they've trained really hard. They've done all the stuff beforehand. But sometimes it's walking out and watching the race before you. How did that race win? How did people react? Where did the breakaway go? How did the winning move happen? Where did the sprint start? I think we forget that a lot of the things that actually make it fun for you do have to do with success. And so setting that success bar of like, okay, if I want to win this race, how do I actually win this race? Not race to be the strongest, not race to be somebody who people are watching, but I want to win. That's very different. And the way that I kind of remind people of that is like, we all ride differently. If I go do a 20-minute test, I'm going to do a 20-minute test based on how much power I want to hold or how much speed I want to hold. They're different. And I think that sometimes we are so eager to just, I want to win or I want to be top 10. And we don't set kind of micro goals to get there because we've already set our micro goals throughout the year to get to this point to be fit. And then by the time that last little thing ticks over, you're in the race and you realize that the break's 2 minutes up the road and you miss your chance.
Yeah, man. The strategy is how you actually activate everything that you've worked on, right? It's like the life that is added in to the bones that you built with all the training. It's not just training. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not going to go over this for all the people I had a bunch of people, I think it was 7 people submit questions. So not a bunch, but 7 people submit questions asking, they had better power numbers than me or watt kg than me at Leadville, but they didn't do as well. And they wanted me to like break down and compare and go through that. And we can't do that because it would feel too self-centered for me and make me feel uncomfortable. And I bet a lot of you would hate it too, because I get that feedback. But in that case, I guarantee you it was just because of, I bet it was because of the execution. And it was just small little things that were done. Like it's really, Leadville isn't this sort of environment where we're talking about like a dynamic criterium style or road race style environment, but the execution's everything. And you can really, really do a lot with a little, or you can really kind of squander a whole lot of hard work too,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we do it all the time with From the Ground Up. Leadville is very easy to break up into certain sections. I think it's always a reminder of, hey, if you go on Strava, if you're trying to finish Leadville in 12 hours and you go on Strava and you pull 10 people's data, and some of those might be private or whatever, but you pull 10 people's data who finished sub 12, there's only like 3 who executed it well. There's 7 people who were like, made it, they were going 10 and a half hours when they hit Twin Lakes and then just suffered all the way home. And they made it, but it wasn't pretty. And that, I think, is a realization for a lot of people of like, you have to follow your plan and get through it and then do all the things well, right? Not flat, descend efficiently, eat correctly, right? All those things. That I think it's just simple, right? And this is my thing when I start, everyone sees the videos with Keegan or anybody else where I'm against drop bars. It's just not for me. It's great for a lot of people, but the simplicity of what you're doing on a bike, you have to find what works best for you, right? And if you can't eat or drink or you're hesitating doing things because of the way you set things up, the weight gain or the aerodynamics gain is not valuable to you.
Yeah. This is interesting how the same principles apply to very different races, because like transferring this back into the criterium and road side of things, this looks like you being very disciplined with not being on the front when you don't need to be on the front and always being in a position where you can react or can take advantage of an opportunity. It's very disciplined about making sure that when you do make a move that you know how long you want to commit to that move and what needs to happen and not basing that off of what everybody else is doing. You have to have these principles in place on how you execute. If you're always out there just racing reactively to what everyone else is doing around you, then it gets really frustrating. You have to have something that, like a plan that you're going to execute, and then you can measure against that execution or that plan with your execution. That's how you decide if the race is a success, Yeah. And that's like, I think hopefully some good guidance for him. So kind of along these lines, this next question is from Victor. Says, Hey guys, since you have US gravel racers on your podcast, can you ask them why it seems that World Tour riders don't dominate when they race gravel? I'm specifically thinking of Greg Van Avermaet, Thomas de Gendt, and Romain Bardet. I think that, so while I get the first two, I think that Romain Bardet's only done like one gravel race and he won it. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, he definitely
I
hasn't.
think he's,
The other three have done Unbound. Roman hasn't.
yeah. Yeah, I think Roman's doing fine, but I could be wrong. So let me know in the comments if that's not the case. He says, I always thought gravel racers were inferior to World Tour, but now I'm thinking I might be wrong. This one's tricky, right? What are your thoughts on it? As a person that went from World Tour and now is in this space, you probably have a unique perspective.
Yeah. Sorry, the boy's trying to get down. Oh, goodness.
Really exciting on the podcast. This is why you should watch YouTube or Spotify. You can watch. Yep.
Yeah, I think I'll start from gravel in the US is much more survival than it is just racing. And I think people don't remember that. One of the reasons that I learned coming in, even when I started doing Epic Rides races and I first met Jonathan, protection of your bike is so important. Getting through a race like Unbound is not just racing. It's not just your power threshold. It is how you clear mud. It is how you set your bike up. It's so many micro choices. They're tough. I mean, we've seen Unbound destroy bikes. Typically, growing up on the road, you have no understanding of how your bike works. You might put some lube, some lube on, right? But yeah, you don't have to. You might change a tube, but now all of a sudden, it is so important that you can plug a tire in less than 10 seconds. Right. And then it's so important that you can diagnose something after a crash immediately.
Yeah, like understanding the jammed chain scenario when you think it's just done and it isn't actually done. All you have to do is X, Y, and Z, and then you can get it back going again. Or maybe you can't get it going and that is what it is, but at least you know.
Yeah. Or the simplest thing of like, you need to put a CO2 head on and you don't know how to like I've seen guys who can't they start freezing their hand and then they don't know what to do with it. And this even happens, you just see it all the time. And so that holds a lot of guys back. Getting through Unbound clean is nearly impossible. So that's the first thing that I think if you have any bad luck, then that's going to happen. Secondly, I think coming from the road, there's an expectation of organized chaos. It's just chaos. Gravel is it's a power test from the beginning typically, and you use a full attrition people out the back. There's no hangout in the 200 mile. There's no relaxation. There's very few breakaways. And breakaways that do happen are mainly field splits, I'd say, or a breakaway going up the road that will never be seen again. Whereas,
what do you mean the separation? I'm thinking of somebody listening to this. The difference between a breakaway and a field separation. Like, can you?
To me, a breakaway is less than 10 guys, whereas more is it might start off as something that's kind of sitting there and might get caught less than a minute for a while. Whereas field splits are something, whether it's a crash or something or some course feature, just creating this massive separation, and you have these groups that could be pelotons themselves. You have 40 guys or 20 guys up front and you got 80 guys behind. But what changed from the road to gravel is there's no teams to chase. There's no thought process. And we saw that at Unbound this year is a lot of us who've done Unbound in the past and might be seen as the names in gravel were how long can we just chill? Let's just spend the first 50 miles just relaxed, right? Pay attention, but be back here. And what happened is there's a field split. And it made Keegan and I no longer could relax, right? And we're trying to do kind of what we just answered the question guy. We're trying to get people excited because we don't want to spend this much energy chasing the field back. And we eventually brought that field split back. But then right when that happened, the race winning move went. And I think that is textbook tactics in a sense that it doesn't typically happen, but that's where in gravel we see that happen a little more, where I think it's so much a race of attrition, and you don't have time to think. And that changes it a lot. So coming from the road, you have to learn that. Greg's tried, but it's just not simple. And then the last I think is just there's not many features on gravel courses that you can always point at and be like, oh, the race is going to go here. On the road, there's a lot of times I think where you can look at a map or a profile and be like, this is where the race is going to start. This is where the race winning move is going to go. There's a couple races in gravel you can say that. But typically it's kind of unknown based on how people are feeling and who takes a chance.
Yeah, that's a really informed perspective. It's kind of interesting because it's tempting to think that cycling is just a power to weight ratio contest. And in certain races, it might be. Don't get me wrong. I know that, or power to aero, whatever it might be. But with these athletes, they usually bring that over. They bring over a huge amount of tactical experience, and it really just helps you understand the fact that if you can play a specific game in a certain way, even though another game might look similar, you get dropped into it, and like it's different. And maybe the same principles are at play, but many times we're all guilty of I can solve a Rubik's Cube, and I have this algorithm in my mind that I use to solve it. I don't actually understand how the Rubik's Cube works, though, because if you're to give me one of those Rubik's Cubes that has like 7 pieces instead, or is like shaped like a pyramid or something, I'd be lost. I wouldn't have any clue what to do. I know how to solve it under a very specific set of circumstances. And I feel like it's easy to fall into that trap where you don't actually understand how the cube works. So then that way you can solve it across different disciplines. And sometimes it's just not possible to learn that. And instead you get really good at executing in a specific way. And then you get over to gravel and you have to learn how to solve it in a different way. It's like a totally different set of, like you mentioned, the attrition side of things. Maybe the closest we get to that is maybe like a race like Paris-Roubaix, where that race, it does seem like we see a lot of, like you said, those field splits where you have those sectors, but no one actually knows that it's going to go in the Forest of Arenberg or in one specific sector. It's different every year. And it's attrition. The field starts to fall apart, and it is full gas from the beginning. I think Tade even said he had the highest power numbers he's ever had in a race for a certain period of time, for like up to like 3 hours or something. So maybe that's kind of like the closest they get, but it's a lot of chaos, huh?
Yeah, I think one days are similar. Yeah, I mean, I think going back, I think if I were to like simplify everything I just said, bike setup is probably what inhibits Europeans the most.
Interesting.
Because it's like we watched Mohoric last year at Unbound. Like they just came in, he had teammates, but they probably didn't have the right tires on based on what I watched. I wasn't there that year.
Crazy.
Right?
You know?
But I think it's just lack of belief that it's actually as rough as people say. Because when you go ride it by yourself, you're like, oh, this is great. But when you're not seeing anything and hitting it at 30 miles an hour, your bike is not made for it. And so a lot of the redundancies that we've built in, or the fears we have as gravel racers, are founded. It's because we've been in those races when you can't see because the dust is coming up in your eyes and there's 100 other guys around you who are fighting for the same corner. And it's a B road that has one line, effectively a single track. And if you ride anywhere else, your bike will not be moving. And that moment, even if your power ends up being stronger than someone winning, that moment, if you don't enter that sector in the right place, just like Roubaix, you will not exist in the race anymore. And there are usually not teammates to help you in gravel because they have also flatted probably. So tires are getting better, but tires used to be the bane of everyone's existence.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that there's a whole different like podcast that probably could happen where we talk about tires themselves and how gravel, for a long time, we just thought that they needed to be cyclocross tires. Then we kind of have drifted into this spot where they just need to be mountain bike tires. And I think that we're fast forward a couple years and everyone's going to realize the fact that like, no, actually, we need tires that are really designed for this unique use case. Yeah. This is not, we can't just use what we've used in other areas, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize, but Keegan ran a 2.4 in Bentonville a couple years ago. I ran a 2.2 and I won. I think we are already moving, and that's because Bentonville roads are scary. I've flatted out every single year other than last year.
Yeah.
That being said, I think we're all moving back toward a little less, right? I think that we've wanted this volume and that's been the savior. But as tire compounds move from mountain biking into gravel tires, we start to realize the value of that and how much you can do with a 45 or a 50 as opposed to going to a 2.2. That you do lose a lot of rolling resistance. Even people say you don't, out of corners and on asphalt. It is massive. Let me ride with you with my 35 slicks and we'll see who enjoys their ride.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of flawed chung testing going on, and chung testing even would be like gracious to it. There's a lot of flawed real world testing out there, you know? So I want to take some liberties with this question. Is there a World Tour rider that you think could step in to gravel and do particularly well? I mean, clearly, Tom Pidcock is really, really impressive with how good he has been in the Mountain Bike World Cup. Like, it is visible that he is not on the same level with bike handling as the rest of the guys, but he is not far off, honestly. It's quite impressive. Whereas Van der Poel just this past weekend, like we watched in Leger, it was very noticeable that he was a long way off of these guys.
Yeah.
But maybe gravel is its own beast. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's its own beast. I think a lot of those guys that kind of dabble in both could be really good. I still think it'd take a couple races. I think if you gave them a Grand Prix year, but at the end of the year, they'd be in the front every single race. I think it'd be 2 races of figuring it out. And a lot of that is figuring it out by yourself, right? Even if you have support, you're not supported once the gun goes off. And that's a little different.
Yeah.
I think, Pidcock, Van der Poel for sure. I think guys like Sepp Kuss, anyone who has a background in mountain biking, I think could come back to this pretty quickly. And it's honestly the biggest thing is power profile also, right? A lot of the World Cup guys that we'd see come over, forget who's the Dutch guy who did a stint on the road from World Cups.
We've had quite a few. Milan Vader was one. Yep.
It didn't go great to me because he can't do anything really well because both are so different. Pidcock's impressive to me because he's been able to find a middle point in the power profile that he's able to either maybe he knows he's doing a World Cup and starts to turn that VO2 on really intensely. But I tried to come in, Jonathan knows this very clearly, when I first came from the road, I was like, I'm going to go do UCI mountain bike racing. And I was blown away by the 30-second to 4-minute power. Just I could ride all day at threshold and just ride through guys, but I lost 2 minutes when the race started. And so I think when you come into gravel, there's a mix in between that now, between the road and UCI mountain biking, where you'd have to find someone who wants to focus on understanding they need a 20-minute power. If we're going to go ride, you're going to see Matt Beers rip the front for a while, and you're going to hang on for dear life. Sea Otter started with Matt ripping the field apart from the gun. And me on the second wheel.
He had a lot of unresolved things from Cape Epic he needed to get out.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was sitting there in second wheel thinking I could come around, but I don't think I need to. We're doing enough damage to the field right now, and I'm suffering. And so it's those moments where it's you have to have the tactical nuance and the strength and the technical ability to be in the right place at the right time for the move. And that's tough because a lot of that also for us is at least for me, is learning courses. Sea Otter was unique because we had never raced it. No one knew how it would race. Now we know. No one will make that mistake next year. Everyone will fight tooth and nail to be 3 riders forward. Whereas,
it's going to be tough.
You look at let's use Leadville, for example. Now, Leadville racing never used to start until Columbine. Keegan starts it at Keevins now, right? So people are will be more turned on for Keevins. All these things start to change based on how the race happens. So I think if you bring those guys over and give them 5 races, they'll be at the front. You just need some level of understanding of how to corner a bike with tread.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you watched Leger this weekend, the Mountain Bike World Cup. It was very interesting, and this is an aside here, but so the course, and Chris Blevins described it as 16 by 3 is what he said. So it was 8 laps, and each lap had roughly a 3-minute climb. So if you think about that in terms of a VO2 workout, that is one absolute horrendous beast of a VO2 workout, right? Because these VO2 efforts, they're not thinking I'm going to ride at 110% or 115 or 120% of my threshold. These athletes, it's just as hard as you can every time. And that's what they had to do. And I found it very interesting because I was looking back, I think it was to Glasgow when Van der Poel was at Worlds there, and just those climbs were shorter than 3 minutes. But man, his ability to punch over and over on those 1 minute-ish, 30-second to 1 minute climbs, the power he was putting out was immense, and it was crazy to see. But I think we saw with this 3-minute effort, his speed on those climbs started to diminish as the race went on, to the point where he was no longer gaining ground on them, which was shocking. I wonder how much of that was due to the tension he was carrying down the descents, or if it was just because of the fact that he's not trained to do 3-minute punches endlessly like that right now. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Coming from a true roadie who is always white-knuckling the bike on descents and slowly starting to remind myself, slap myself in the face and wake up a little bit, it's probably, you lose so much energy on the descents.
Yeah.
It's just tough. I don't think people understand that. This is, again, probably an aside from that, but after I met you and was an epic ride, and it's kind of right before the Grand Prix happened, I didn't know, this was 2019. I started paying for skills coaches, and it changed my ability to ride in the race. I'm still not even close to Keegan or Russell or those guys who grew up doing it, and I never will be. But I'm able to hide it a little bit and be around and survive, where I think a lot of roadies who come in, they just think it's just like everything else. They just have more grip now, and it's not. You don't get to choose the line in the corner. That's the hard part of this. And so
Yeah.
I'd be following people down at any race, and I'd be like, oh, cool. When I'm following Keegan down when we're pre-riding Leadville, he's faster than me, but I can pedal hard, keep up. We have the full road. When I'm descending in the race and I'm foobarred and there's riders coming up, it's a different story. I have a dropper, he doesn't, and he's still riding away from me. And that is effectively just his relaxation down, in my opinion. I mess up one corner and the next three are an issue. And so I look at someone like Vanderpool at Leger, and it is completely based upon that, right? It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. You do this hard effort, you're blind, you're not as excited about the descent as other people. And then you see someone else having fun, right? Sending some flair off it. And it's that's, I think, what I like. When I love watching Blevins, he's tired, but those guys who are so good tactically, like Bjorn Riley, Blevins, Nino, there's always something else they're adding into the descent that I'm like, put my wheels on the ground, please.
Yeah. I find it, I think that there's strategy in that, actually, for a lot of these guys. I think that they do that as a reminder to themselves that, number one, this is fun. Number two, to relax and be in their element, because they have the skill to be there. Because I think they're trying to pull them, fight and flight, right? When you are climbing, it is 100% fight. And it is full aggression. Everything is turned on. You are locked in. And then when you go to that descent, if you can shift anything toward parasympathetic from sympathetic, it's going to pay dividends. And sometimes we forget. We get so locked in on the descent itself that we're thinking about, at least for me, and I'm nowhere near as good as Keegan or anybody else. So I can only imagine it's even higher at that level for the World Cup athletes. But when I go through a descent, I suddenly start analyzing every single square millimeter. And I'm like, where can I be the absolute most efficient and locked in? And sometimes I reach that climb again, and I'm like, ooh, my brain's a little hot. It's a little melted, And it takes so much mental energy and focus to be able to hold the power you need to go up that climb and to squeeze every drop out of that lemon.
Yeah.
So I think that when they're throwing those whips, I don't think it's all just to be for the crowd. I think that they're doing that when they're doing little manuals, that sort of thing, to remind themselves to turn off a little bit and to be like, hey, just let yourself go here.
Yeah. And I get a lot of criticism when I bring up Keegan too much, but I've already dropped his name 18 times, so may as well do it 20. I think there's a moment, there's two things. So when I was first coming into the sport, we were before Whiskey 50. It was the first time I had ever seen a mountain biker do a big block. Keegan and I did a 30-hour block leading into Whiskey. And I was like, wow, this guy's got diesel. I also juxtaposed that with, maybe he won't love me saying this, but Keegan was not great at World Cups. And that wasn't confidence, right? That wasn't anything else. He just hadn't found what he was great at in this sport. If you had given Keegan a time trial on the World Cup course, he'd be in the top 5, in my opinion. But that's not how racing happens.
For sure.
And so I look back at that the other way of saying, Keegan looks at going to the road. Everyone's kind of heard this story and kind of realized, yeah, I could do it, but I'm going to spend 3 years learning all these nuanced things to become good enough to be here and effectively understand and find that enjoyment of racing for the success level I want, and which is probably the reason he didn't go. And so I think it's so easy to always look at kind of what someone's doing and compare it. There's so many comparisons right now between gravel and road and who's stronger. And I don't disagree. You put Tade on a gravel bike, you give him 3 months, or you give him a climb, he's gonna mess everybody up. That's not a question, right?
Yeah.
They are very strong. But I would argue, average to average, if you could compare, which you can't because there's a lot more road cyclists than there are gravel cyclists, it's pretty similar. because it's just different power profiles and the way we're racing. My power numbers from the road to now, I was not a spectacular road rider, also left when I was 23, to now, they're the same, if not stronger in different areas. And so that, I think, is just the interesting part of it is I've gained some weight because you have to be able to not have this massive arm pump when you're finishing some of these gravel races or mountain bike races. It's similar. Like I did some of my best 10-minute efforts last week ever at altitude. I did 4:10 then 4:05, which rivals that 20-minute number we talked about at the beginning. I haven't done that in years, right? And so I think I'm heavier, so the watts per kilo is less, but a raw power, me racing Matt, I'm not worried about the watts per kilo right now. I'm worried about raw power and hanging onto his wheel. So it's all these little things that I think add in to people saying so-and-so would come in and dominate. And I think that's what happens when you have someone like Greg, who is so good at what he does. Like Greg Van Avermaet is so good at what he does, but he spent so long doing it in one way. And all of a sudden, there's 3 different options and one way to do it.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's also like, we shouldn't hold, in my opinion, we shouldn't hold Greg, Thomas DeGent, Romain Bardet to a standard because these athletes have moved on beyond the primary focus of their career. Their training, they may be intentionally backing off from it because these athletes have spent so much of their life, so much suffering doing it. And they may be to a point now where they aren't investing as much into training, but they still love racing their bike. And that's why they're out there too. So, and I don't mean to imply that in this case, Victor was saying this, but for anybody that looks at these athletes that come in somewhat of a post-primary career role into gravel, let's make sure that we keep that context in mind here. Let's not say that this definitively proves that World Tour athletes are not as good as gravel athletes because somebody after the prime of their career jumps into gravel. It's different circumstances.
Because I think it'll go both ways. I think if you took a gravel field and put them on, Cavendish would probably have probably have a better 20-minute power than most guys.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? That people just wouldn't think so. Throw the gravel field into the World Tour, and it would make them all look like Cat 5s. So,
we'd cause a lot of crashes, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Brody's question says, "Hey coaches, I've recently started joining the local Sunday group ride. It's 47 miles and 2,560 feet of climbing, and I'm having a hard time going with a winning move. I think I'm stronger than most at 287 watts for my FTP and 4.0 watts per kilogram. That's a strong cyclist.
Yeah.
But every time I go with what seems like the winning move, we end up getting caught and then miss the real winning move. Are there signs to look for in a move that signals it will stick, or is it down to timing? For context, my normalized power is usually about 260 watts for the first hour, but they say the first hour is usually higher, around 275 or so. So I'm not over my limit. Any advice you can share would be appreciated." I tried to look to see if this athlete had a TrainerRoad account, and it doesn't look like they do, so I can't analyze the race files. If you ever want us to look at this in this scenario, it might be really helpful to link to that so then we can kind of see your power profile, because that can really tell a lot of the story. In this case, they don't. But I thought it was an interesting question to cover from your perspective, Alexey. This question of, are there signs to look for in a winning move that looks like signals that it will stick, or is it just down to timing? What do you think?
I would always. Typically, you should never be instigating. This is a weird rule, but on the road, you should never be instigating the move. Just follow, because there's so many moves that are going to go before the winning move. You follow, you roll through, you see how it looks, because the gap is never decided by the breakaway. It's always decided by the peloton. It's someone letting the space go.
That's a really interesting point. I want to refocus on that. It's so rarely determined because the breakaway is just riding so fast, and it's almost always determined because the field has decided to slow down relative to the breakaway.
Yeah. And people misunderstand that. You can look back, and if you have that gap, you have that gap. And we have all had that feeling where you attack or your breakaway goes, and you look back, you're like, wow, that gap's way bigger than I expected. Someone made a mistake or something happened that changed the field's demeanor. That being said, also, I think you can also in a move start to look for the way people are attacking, right? A lot of the moves, you see people are tired, and you see one person attack hard and 3 people follow them, and they're looking back right away. That's never going to be the move. It's always going to be something that's focused up the road. And I think that's harder to feel, but you kind of feel the energy of people who are, when they're attacking, of like, that was vicious, of like how much that gap's going to create. Because I would say you need 10 seconds to build a breakaway. Like, you need space, that immediate space, to then find rhythm together and see how long you can hold these things apart and see what happens. Yeah. And then lastly, I think it sounds like you're super strong. I would always look at your power profile. We've just talked about it for 20 minutes, and I think it's something that people underestimate a lot. If you are able to spend more time in zone 2 than you are in zone 3, that's better. If you're able to spend more time in zone 3 than zone 4, that's better. That is a lot of people's Achilles heel, is they do not train everything. And that usually ends up affecting you, right? You get in the breakaway and all of a sudden you're riding over 287 watts for longer than 5 minutes. You don't just need to go down to tempo. You need to drop down and like recover. And that's going to really cause stress for the next move to go.
This is why, look, like a lot of people I think are taking what I would, in modern parlance, call vibe training. Like where what we do is we ride our bike, and then when we want, we drop in and do a workout. And I think that's probably the most sustainable approach for a lot of cyclists, because a training plan sucks the joy out of cycling for them. So I think that that's an example of good, better, best. If you want to be good, then make sure you introduce some structure. If you want to be better, then make sure you're following a structured training plan that is based off the goal that you want to achieve. Now, that goal could be just like raising your FTP or getting better at group rides, or it could be something that is going to be a specific race that you're doing. And like a plug for TrainerRoad is we've actually like redesigned, because our system now analyzes your entire training history. And then when it analyzes your training history, it suggests a schedule for you, but you can decide and tailor from there. Say, well, actually, I'm not training for Leadville. I just want to increase my FTP. Or in this case, for this athlete here, for Brody, maybe you just want to target the group ride and you just want to be really good at the group ride. You can make that your goal. And as a result, it's going to give you the right mix of training adjusted to your abilities. So then that way you can actually have, like Alexey said, you can be dynamic and be able to match the demands of what you're doing. I think I'm going to put what Alexey said in different words, and I think it'll kind of make a lot of sense to people here. Alexey was mentioning the fact that, let's just say you're riding over threshold. So let's just say you're riding a VO2 for 5 minutes. If you were training after that 5-minute VO2 interval, you would absolutely drop down to very low. You'd just be inching along, right? Noodling, because you're just trying to recover. So if you find yourself in a race situation where you're doing that, you can't just expect to drop then down to threshold or tempo or something else and just be like, yeah, okay, I can sit in and recover and do it again. You have to understand the demands of what you're doing. So I think a good way to shortcut that, again, use TrainerRoad. Go sign up. If you're listening to this and you haven't, you should. But this is another really interesting point that you brought up. Alexey, I'm thinking really quick through the experiences in my mind and the breakaways that I see go. I see a lot of breakaways that look extremely impressive, like breakaway attempts that look extremely impressive. Somebody's out of the saddle, sprinting, their bike's flopping all over the place. But I feel like if I look back through my experiences, more often than not, the breakaways that stick don't actually look that violent and impressive. Yep. It seems like a case of momentum where an athlete has it, but they're not setting themselves up to the point where they're going to need to recover shortly after doing this all-out effort. Have you noticed the same thing? Like these all-out sprints, it seems like it's less common that those efforts stick.
Yeah, I think typically the all-out sprints it's kind of a convincing of the athlete who's attacking that they feel good, they're going to do this. It's less of like a sustainable thing, because we know whoever's sprinting, like it's not sustainable. I don't care how strong you are. If you're Vanderpool, it's 30 seconds, right? Like,
yeah.
That being said, I think there's sometimes you see that like really intense attack work, right? Like we look at the one-day classics, you see that with Tade or with Vanderpool, where it's so violent and then over the top, but they've planned for it, right? They know how hard they can go, when they need to stop, and then how hard they need to settle down into. And that settle down is where the breakaway actually happens. Their settle down is harder than somebody else behind them.
This is hard starts, like the format you prefer, right? I think these sort of efforts are crucial for that.
Yeah. But I think like as an example for me, like Big Sugar last year that ties everything we just talked about together, I went away because there's 2 guys up the road, and I was like, that's a great launch pad, and it's been sitting there nice and pretty for a while. So that part of me that's like, if I'm going to win the race, that's an awesome way to do it. Secondly, I rolled off the front and nobody moved. And I couldn't believe it, but it was that choice that the peloton made a choice because I hadn't been as good in the Grand Prix in the last 3 races because of Leadville, and then had food poisoning at Schwalm and flatted out of the rad. I think in people's minds, it was like, Alexey's good, but he's not who I'm racing today. And that one
Yeah.
moment of hesitation, I didn't start sprinting. I kept riding. I told myself, you cannot go over 3:30. You have 2.5 hours of racing left. If you're going to ride by yourself, you can do 3:30 for 2.5 hours. I can't do more than that. I know I can't. And so I didn't know at that time I'm riding to win, but I knew at that time I'm riding to sustainably get to the finish and race for the win. Whether that means a group comes up to me from behind, whether I catch the group in front and they're stronger than me, you're just preparing to move the pieces around the board. And so I think that's the one thing is breakaways always seem like a guarantee in some people's heads of like, I'm breaking away to win. I was breaking away because the right tactical move at that time and someone let me go. And then after that, it's making new choices throughout as the race plays out.
That's super heads up racing and a person that understands racing. I like how you just like committed to what you knew was sustainable.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because sharing something on the other side, because I know from talking to Keegan and Matt in that race, and you probably were witness to this, but like it was they were just marking them. And when you went, and I can't repeat the words that Keegan said to the field on this podcast, but he let every single person know, you're idiots for not chasing Alexey down. He's going to win this bike race if you let him go.
And Matt chased for a minute, and then he's the same. He got off the front. And he was like, I'm not going to pull everyone back.
Yeah. And it was, I hope, well, I mean, I don't because I hope for your continued success, but I hope that athletes recognize at that point, like, look, like you guys are missing the point. Like the point is to win the bike race. It isn't just to mark the guy that could win the bike race. And Alexey knows this, and Alexey can make it stick. It was a super impressive win that you had because not only, so once you caught those 2 riders, what happened thereafter? Because the big temptation is you've just done a really hard effort and you catch 2 people. And there's always the temptation to just like rest up, and then you build up in your mind, oh, we're all going to work together like a good group of 3.
Yeah. I think the first thing is, so I didn't know what I was riding into. So I got up there and realized like, I am the strongest one here. That doesn't change much, but it changes barring, flatting, bad luck. I can take this to the line. Worst case scenario. That was like the first thought. Secondly was by the time I got up to them, I think we had a 2.5 minute gap. That was that I still expected the group to come from behind. I was like, there's no way they don't race their bikes.
Oh, Alexey. Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And so by the time we started racing, so I think the first real effort we rolled decently together. I wouldn't say like as fast as I had been going to catch them, obviously, but from the second feed zone, I attacked on a steep climb coming out just to see where guys were and like make sure we were going to ride together. I kind of realized that the race wasn't coming back together. And now it was, now I need to put plans into place to realize, how do I win this race? Because being the strongest does not mean you win. People very honestly make that mistake a lot. And so, and Colby was really strong, and he was on a better tire setup for the finish. The last 6 miles of Bentonville is all asphalt, and I'm on a 2.2 mountain bike tire on the front, right? And Colby's on 40 millimeter Vittoria dries. And it's that moment of realization of like, cool, you're the strongest, you still got to do the deed. And so I think it's like, as I started putting efforts in and seeing how far the gap was, you could start having that conversation and seeing where athletes are. We dropped, forgetting his name, the European rider first. He kind of slowly would come back, but I knew I was holding on. Colby was begging me to go slower on climbs. So I was figuring out where and how to exact that vengeance and then know the course. And so we came into the finish. It was just Colby and I into the last 6 miles on asphalt. I went pretty hard up the final climb. And one of my favorite parts of this moment, just quick tangent, is like Colby's dad and Quinn Simmons' dad running beside, because I know him from Tucson. He's cheering for Colby, and then at the same time saying, good job, Alexey, good job, Colby, you're doing it, you can catch him, good job, Alexey. And I was like, okay, Scott, you're killing it. But I'm over the top of the climb, and there's this lull of like, I'm at the finish, but you still have to climb to the finish line. And so there's like a 1.5 miles that I think people underestimate, and Colby started pulling me back. but I knew that was the minute that I had won. The minute Colby put his final chips in that kind of lull before the final climb, that was the moment I realized I'd actually won, because it was someone who, like, he was so focused on the finish and not the way to the finish. So I think there's just
Interesting.
breakaways as you get through. It's so different. And like you're saying, Big Sugar, the instance of that happening was only Matt and Keegan choosing to not race their bikes to let other people get a free total line, because they had their own races going on. And that is not how it typically goes, right? It's about finding that line of what you can do, right? Because if I could have only done 280 watts, it wouldn't have mattered probably. Probably still would have been back in the field. So it's a lot of micro decisions.
It's interesting because, you do have to be so tall to ride the ride, so to speak, and that's your fitness to get there. But so much of winning these races, like going from good to great, again, going back to this theme, it's about being a patient cyclist and like removing emotion from your decision making and being able to view things just pragmatically. This is, we talk about on the training side. I'm going to recap a bit of this here because we're going to go into one more question, but I want to talk about on the training side. Alexey, you've mentioned a principle that, like, you have to make sure that you're training for what you're going to be experiencing in the race. That doesn't mean that you have to go and do 12 hours prior to doing Leadville when you're trying to get there before the cutoff. That just means that you need to be prepped for those long, stable power sort of efforts, and then that sort of like that tempo grind that you're going to have to do for much of the day. Whereas if you're going to be doing something like cross country Olympic, you need to be making sure that you're training for what you're going to experience in the race, the sort of efforts that you do. And then adding on top of that, you need to make sure that you're actually allowing all of your preparation to show and shine when you're with your execution. So you have to make sure that you're reading the race and stepping back, not being emotional. Kristen has a question. Oh, sorry. Do you have something to add?
No, I think just on the line of what this podcast is about, like becoming a good to great cyclist is like, it's also just, it's knowing your body and doing those things. Like for myself, coming into Leadville, I knew from 3 weeks out, I don't know what it was. I couldn't find my groove. And I also knew that I wasn't going to sacrifice the entire season by overriding to try to find something. And Leadville kind of popped something, but it was, I don't know what my body didn't want, but I could have told you the day before the race that it was going to be a sufferfest. And whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And so, but the minute that all changes, we went from training a lot in that high tempo, low threshold area for Leadville and being prepared for high altitude to immediately focusing on high end efforts that I had foregone for the last month, because and all of a sudden we're doing less hours. I don't think I've done more than 20 hours in the last 4 weeks, but we're doing over 1100 TSS and these massive big, 2.5 hours with 5 to 10 times 3-minute VO2s that are solely focused on Schwalm and then the minute you get through that, all I have to do is carry endurance through to Big Sugar because it's still this intense race. And so I think it is that's that portion, right? That you're talking about being a good cyclist is also knowing I could have ruined my whole season if I just rode myself into the ground before Leadville and needed a recovery period. It was like, how did I continue this trend up all the way to October as opposed to Leadville, take a break, then build back up? Because there's not enough time to do that.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of experience and being open with yourself. I think a lot of people are afraid of their training going poorly.
For sure.
So, and they kind of see the writing on the wall. And usually it comes from doing too much for amateurs. And too much doesn't look like doing 20 hours. Sometimes it looks like doing 8 hours. And all your life allows you to do is adapt to 6 hours of training stress. Like, it's not about available time. It's about bandwidth to be able to absorb your training. And many times, a principle that I'm getting from what you discussed there, Alexey, is many times athletes are afraid to look the impending reality in the eye and be like, okay, I need to make adjustments. I need to drop back. I know I told my friends I was going to go on this big ride this weekend with everybody, but that's the last thing that I need right now. Yep. And something else matters more. And I need to make this adjustment. And because that's instead what you can do is you can just face it and look at it and be like, this is the likelihood. This is where I feel everything going. I'm not feeling as fresh as I wanted to. I haven't been able to hit my workouts like I want to. In that case, it's so much better to make adjustments and to step back and to err on the side of caution, excess recovery, because that's only going to set yourself up to be able to get back to where you need to be. But if you keep pushing, the odds are so low that it's somehow going to get better one day to the next.
Yeah, and it gets to the last question, but I think that's also the biggest thing that I think people forget is the balance of real life. This training stress score that defines our lives now is very bad at actually figuring stress out in our lives, right? Like,
Yes.
and that I think some people look at, you want to look at people's Strava or anything else. I do a lot less hours than a lot of my peers. That is not because I think I can be as strong as them doing less hours. It is because I know my limit with all the content and projects and other things I'm doing. I don't have the time to do everything. So I have to be honest with myself, and I have to find the line of where can I be an effective athlete with the time I have, and where can I be an effective person, human on the other side. And of course, it's
Yeah.
that's a priority choice that people have to make. It's a very different balance from someone having a like a 9 to 5 job, but that's my balance, right? I'm okay going into the race saying I'm 95%, not 100. But I can get to
Yes.
95% and I can be great and I can make effective moves and I can win a couple races throughout the year. So many people will look at me and say I do too much, and that's their choice. And at times I do, but I think I'm also one of the only riders beyond Keegan to win 2 Grand Prix races. And that's because I
Yeah,
give
exactly.
myself space to allow things to not go well. And that most people, I think it's too difficult for them, right? To truly compartmentalize and understand that, like, hey, I want to go ride 2 hours extra today, but it's not effective to my training. Just because it's
Yeah.
fun doesn't mean it's good.
So important. This is an interesting one because we've kind of taken a very it's a approach that's different, that's standing out in stark contrast. What we're doing is following data, and what the data shows is that, you know, and we'll use Leadville again as an example. You could say, I'm going to go race Leadville. And then if you're going to go race Leadville, you know, you think in your mind, like, I need to be doing massive hours. But what what the data shows is that athletes, when a training plan meets an athlete where they're at currently, that they actually have a better long-term result and an outcome. The trajectory is much more sustainable. So in many cases, you'll see athletes, and TrainerRoad will analyze their training history. It'll look at what they've done historically. It understands that. And then it looks at what they've done recently. It meets them where they're at. And they'll be like, it's not enough volume. And it's like, look, it may not be as much as what you've done before, but it's data backed, and it's going to make you faster and build so that you actually can get to the point where you are doing more volume eventually, but it's still always going to be keeping in track or keeping you in line, and probably doing less because our eyes are always bigger than our stomachs with volume.
Yeah,
You know?
we're going to get to Kristen, but my last step on that is it is so true because that is the value of TrainerRoad. I'm not a big fan of bike fits. I believe the experience of someone wanting to change something scares me because I have so much experience with the feeling I like on a bike. That to me is the reason why I look at something. What is Specialized Bike Fit company?
Yeah, Retool.
Retool.
Yep.
The reason why I think Retool is great is not the people doing Retool. It's all the data behind it, right? And that concept is the same with TrainerRoad, is the same with my coach. My coach and I have figured out over 15 years of working together what workouts work for me for what races. I'm literally doing the same 3 weeks effectively, minor changes with weather, I did going into Schwalming in the last 2 years because it worked. And that I think is that data-driven focus is what people tend to forget, that there is so much time as an athlete where you have to just believe. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know, Lucas, not feeling so great. 4 days later, I'm like, holy crap, I'm on top of the world. Let's go race. Because it
Yes.
comes like that.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to leave is I think most professional cyclists don't talk about this. I would argue I feel good maybe 1 day a week. That's how it's
Mm.
supposed to feel, right? It's not supposed to all be suffering. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that feeling of wow, I killed that workout. That doesn't happen every day. And I think
Mm.
you need to remind yourself that's okay because sometimes it's just doing the work.
Is it also fair to say that sometimes that the majority of your workouts also don't bring you to your knees?
100%. Yes. I mean, I very rarely ever. I mean, that's the thing. I had that one all-out 10-minute efforts was the first time. And I told people I actually like that more than VO2 sometimes because it's what you have. There's a beauty to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd argue I did a big ride last week and I planned this ride out that I wanted to do. It was 80 miles and 11,000 feet on mountain bikes and all these mountain bike trails and beautiful weather. And I got to the end and I was like, I had five hours in the plan. I was at 5.5 and I was like, I want to go hit this last trail. It's only downhill. It doesn't matter, but I would have been done by 6:15 and I had VO2 the next day. It's those moments where yeah, does it actually make a big difference on that day? Probably not. Could I get the next VO2 workout done? Yeah. but I have 2 more weeks of build into Schwalmingen, into the end of the year. We forget how much this builds on itself when we override. And that same goes for underriding, right? You can have that balance, but I think just because it's downhill or easy or you're coasting is still stress on the body, is still time you're not quantifying that's unvaluable, that isn't focused on what you're doing and doesn't help you move forward.
Yep. Yeah. The opportunity cost, you could be doing other things that would be recovering at that time, right? So awesome. Great points. Kristen, last question, says, after years of competing in triathlons and road racing, I took the plunge into gravel this year. I've always considered my bike handling skills to be poor and represented the typical triathlete stereotype. So I was very surprised to not be overwhelmed with anxious feelings on gravel. This has me wanting to try mountain biking, but I'm very nervous about this. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and every trail seems to be covered in slick roots, rocks, bridges, and unannounced drops and jumps. Do you have any tips for how I can get started and build confidence on my mountain bike? Alexey, this has been like your story from the beginning. Is you really targeted, like you mentioned before, you worked with skills coaches, that sort of thing. You like saw a weakness and then you targeted it and you've worked specifically at it. It doesn't mean that you're the best in the world at it. It never was supposed to be that. It was just, you incrementally going up. But what's made them, and actually, before I get into the question on this, I always feel more sketchy on gravel than I do on mountain bikes because mountain bikes have suspension, better geometry, bigger tires. They give me more traction. And gravel, honestly, usually I go through a turn and I'm like, man, at any moment here, I could just wash right out and I could die. So I always feel, but then I look at the fact that she's from the Pacific Northwest. Kristen, you might have like beautiful loamy dirt and that's why it might feel really nice. So I don't know. With that in mind, Alexey, what have you done? And what have you found that has improved your confidence more on the mountain bike and gravel bike?
I think 2 big things is the skills coaching side is all body position to me, weight distribution. Like coming from the road, the way you set up for a corner, that's the difference. You're so wholly committed to the corner and your line in the apex that's what's creating speed, creating exit speed. Mountain biking and gravel, that's not the case. It is you have to change mid corner sometimes. And that's just how it is. And so a lot of that was for me learning weight distribution. I can't just set up, put one foot down and like go through this gravel corner. Now I have to expect and change that my bike is going to move underneath me and what to do in those certain situations. So one, whether it's a skills coach or just practicing by yourself in a place that you feel safe, going through the same corner over and over where you can get similar experiences, it's understanding that your weight distribution is going to help you get through that corner or not help you get through that corner. It can feel really sketchy if you are stiff and straight up and down because your bike has nothing to do. There's nothing holding it. Gravel tires have tread, but I always laugh at most of the time, like that outer tread, I would say 95% of people never use. They never realize how far they have to lean the bike to get to that. Like a specialized pathfinder, like majority of people never get to the outside tread. And that's not a negative. They don't lean the bike far enough to find the grip. So if you're in that middle portion, you're just going to slide until you get through the corner.
Yeah, what those are on the edges, those are bumpers when you go bowling. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you hit those are going to really be the last ditch effort to try to keep you upright.
Yeah.
That's what they're for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then the other side of that is setting bike up. Like when I first met Jonathan and I first met Keegan, I was learning that like I had way too much air in my tires. I didn't have a dropper. These things can help the enjoyment of it so much. One, it helps get your body in the right position, i.e. weight distribution, and then also allows the bike to do the most it can. If you're on a mountain bike and you go feel what it feels like to have 25 PSI in versus 18, you're going to be blown away.
Different world.
I had no idea because from the road, if I have 110 or 115, it wouldn't matter. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing is as you move into mountain biking, especially in wet areas, having the right tires and the right pressure will make the ride so much more enjoyable. And you start to figure out, again, kind of like a gravel corner, how much can I lean and how much am I trying to avoid some of those sections? What I've learned about mountain biking, the reason I'm never going to be great at it, is most of the guys just jump over all this. And I don't do that. I'm like, I just rode that. Why'd you jump over it? Being in the air is simpler. You got to land.
They see the Matrix where you don't, right? Yeah. It's like, for those that want to watch, go onto our YouTube channel. I raced the Enduro World Series at North Star, and I had a GoPro on. And then we had Richie Rude come in and critique. But Richie is such a sweetheart, which, by the way, congrats, Richie.
Yes.
Big podcast listener, TrainerRoad user, just became world champion again. Amazing. But Richie, he's such a sweet guy that he was like kind of trying to soften the blow. But there was no use in that. We drew his lines on where he was talking about going. I never, ever considered going there. And this is coming from a person that raced motocross, like at a semi-professional level. I'm a good bike rider, and I would have never seen the Matrix like that. Yeah. And it's a really fun watch to go look through. And the stages are like 3 to 5 minutes. I think there was 5 or 6 of them, so it's pretty easy to rip through them pretty quick. But go check that out to get an idea of what Alexey's talking about. That the top riders just see things that we don't see. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, one thing I've noticed with skills coaching is that skills coaching is important because they're going to find the way to say the thing to you. They're going to find the problem, but then you need to hear it in a specific way, or you need to practice something in a specific way that's going to unlock the solution for you. And it's like different for every person. I could just constantly tell you, this is what works for me to feel like I have better traction and control through a corner, or works for me over a jump, or whatever it might be. But it just will never resonate with you. There's a high likelihood that it won't, because you're different than me and you hear it differently. So it's really important to work with a good skills coach that isn't just saying, I'm really good at riding my bike, but a person that has experience teaching a lot of different people, because they understand that it's not just being good at riding the bike, but it's also being good at understanding how to relate the goals or the outcome, or I should say like the steps they need to take in order to ride better, how to relate that to a person. And that's like that's what's a good or a great skills coach does.
Yeah. And I think probably a lot of TrainerRoad users are like I used to be. It's hard to set that time apart. I could have probably done what I do with my skills coach after the first 3 hours by myself, but it was forced slowing down. This is not a workout. You're sessioning this, you're working on this. This is the only goal of today. And so setting that in my training was what actually moved me forward, I think, as opposed, and I've even tried to do it now without a skills coach. It's like, hey, I'm so focused on my VO2 that I'm like not paying attention to like the needs of little sugar coming. And so the technical aspects of what I'm doing, I have to just go ride my mountain bike more. I just need to. But you have to set time apart, because in my head, I'm saying, well, that's less valuable training. And it is. I'm less on the pedals. It's different, right? It's not, to what I'm working toward right now, it's not valuable. And so I've worked with like Lee McCormick and Rich Drew. Both were great. A lot of that for me was like personality. That's what I care about. And it really fit. It's about like moving towards something with set goals of spending hours just doing this. And I thought I would never be tired. By the end, I get to like a 5 or 8 hour skills day. You're smoked, man. You can't do anything more, right? And that's the progression there is, I think, what's valuable. That first time I did it with Lee, I think we spent 5 days, and we started like just at Valmont Bike Park in Boulder, and we ended at Winter Park doing downhill laps on my cross-country bike. And so the evolution in those 5 days was massive, but it gave me tools to go practice, and it more for me as an endurance athlete, I was able to say, hey, this week is only for this. If I don't train, I don't train. That's what it is. And like that acceptance is probably the biggest part of it, because I think otherwise you come in, you're like, oh, I got to go do a little workout here. I got to ride over hard. Like, be as fresh as you can, because you will be smoked.
Yeah. And that long-term investment continues to pay off for you.
Yeah.
You know,
I haven't done
like,
skills coaching since. And
and it's worth it. So, and no better time to do it than the off season now. So, you've got plenty of time and opportunities.
You're going a little or big sugar. That's where Rich Drew is.
There we are.
Simple.
And what a great place to work on skills, like in Bentonville.
Everything.
You have every trail you could think of right there. So, Alexey, thanks a bunch, man. I'm going to link down to Alexey's Instagram down below, so then you can go follow him. That's going to be the hub to be able to be connected into all things Alexey, all the different things he has going on.
That's where you find
also.
Willie.
Well, that's where you
find Willie's Instagram. Is off my
That's
Instagram.
Right. That's what people really care about. His dog, riding with him in the doggy backpack. So, go check that out. Go support Alexey and support the companies that support Alexey. Envy, he's been with Envy for a very long time, and they've worked on some really cool projects, the projects that we all enjoy these days. Like I ride the Envy Melee and just absolutely love it every time I get on the bike. And I'm grateful that Alexey was part of that. I like the fact that I supported that. I like Alexey. This is how we make the whole sport go around. So go do that. If you want to become go from being a good cyclist to a great cyclist, sign up with TrainerRoad. It's always tough to say this offhand, so we really hedge against it. But if you're looking for a 10 watt FTP increase, it is very, very likely that's going to happen within the first 4 weeks. We see data that shows far above that, but it's also because a lot of people, they might get out of shape, then sign up right with us. So we're not going to quote 120 watt increase that you might see because somebody sees that. Instead, we'll be conservative. You're going to see a huge increase because it's data backed. There's nothing crazy. It uses AI to guide your training. If you want to get faster, it's the way to go. Alexey, we'll talk to you next time. Anything else you want to cover?
I just want to say thank you. Support the company supported me. It's very wholesome for me here because Jonathan and TrainerRoad bought my first dropper ever. I was not in a place to buy a dropper myself at that time. I was coming into the sport and made very little money. The little things that go a long way. Who knew we'd be here 5 years later, 7 years later?
Who knew? Yeah, well, I definitely felt like we knew that you were something special. So, and we were just excited to help you out, period. So go support Alexey, go support all the different things that he's involved in, and go sign up for TrainerRoad. We'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Jonathan.